Story 1. My 6th grade class went to the 1964 World's Fair in New York City, and one of the mom chaperones lost Tommy. We couldn't board the bus home until he was found. The chaperone was crying and sobbing. Our teacher was furious, and nearly all the kids were dying laughing. Well past our scheduled departure time, some official with a walkie-talkie told us Tommy was found and that the cops were driving him to our bus. We all cheered and jumped up and down. The adults were relieved. Our school bus was now the only one in the lot. A cop in a golf cart came. The kid was Tommy, but not our Tommy. Everyone gasped. About 10 minutes later, our Tommy showed up, all on his own, eating cotton candy and carrying 3 bags filled with souvenirs. Story 2. There was this nerdy kid that somehow ended up dating the most popular girl in school. And then he got super popular and went to the dance. And he did this crazy dance called the African anteater ritual. And everyone else started doing it too. Story 3. In high school, we had an organization called the Dad's Club. They would work the concessions at the football and basketball games, raise money for the school, do charitable events, etc. One day, I went into school and everyone was talking about how one of the dads that volunteered stole $5,000 from the Dad's Club. This was 1987, so that was a lot of money back then. A kid came up to me the next day and asked me if I heard who stole the money. I said no. He said it was my dad. I found out later it was indeed my dad. Story 4. In junior high school, one part of the school was evacuated because of a shark. It was actually a fetal shark preserved in formaldehyde in a glass jar that someone dropped when moving it from one science classroom to another. In high school, we had a near riot. The unlikely cause was a mystery movie being shown that turned out to be some kind of bizarre Monty Python movie. We had paid money to see this and didn't know what to make of it. Story 5. In grammar school, one of the lads, Donnie, found a trap door at the back of the metalwork classroom. He crawled into the space, and we shut the trap door and moved a bench over it. The teacher could not understand where the knocking noises were coming from. When we let Donnie out after 15 minutes, the teacher knew where the cursing was coming from. Story 6. All of the best crazy things came out of shop class. Probably the most notable was when someone was curious what would happen if they put their finger on an industrial belt sander. Answer: lots of blood. There was one time someone got caught with tobacco in his lip. The teacher called him out and told him to open his mouth, but he refused. So the teacher choked him until he spat it out. Oh, and we had a band teacher for 3 years that was known for his outbursts. The biggest of which, he threw a music stand at a student. Story 7. We had a game at lunch called Killer Bee. The object of the game was to catch a frisbee 3 times. Then you got to throw the frisbee. The catch was that there were upwards of 20 other guys out catching. Well, maybe 10 were actually trying to catch. The rest were otherwise occupied. It was like a mosh pit. The crazy part was that I don't remember anyone getting seriously injured, and I'm pretty sure no one actually died. If there are any other guys from the class of 78 reading this, they might be able to verify it. Story 8. Taylor County High School, Taylor County, Florida, 1983 or 4. We caught an armadillo around 5 p.m. on a Sunday. Stuffed it into an old gym bag. Monday, 6:30 a.m. Get on the bus with the gym bag. Lunchtime, 11:30 a.m. That armadillo had been in that bag for over 18 hours. It's North Florida in late August. It's hot, around 90 degrees. Our lunchroom was not big enough to hold all of the students, so there were 2 lunchtimes, but it was still very crowded. The armadillo shot out of the gym bag like a rocket, straight into the crowded room. You could tell where he was by the human wave left behind him. He might have weighed 20 pounds, and one that size has impressive claws. He was going so fast and it was so crowded that hardly anyone saw it, so they had no idea what was running around, bouncing off their legs. It was by far the funniest thing I've seen in my life. The armadillo even managed to escape. He was caught several days later and painted the school colors. Story 9. My Spanish teacher had been looking for a new home for her parrot, and the special education class had expressed interest. Almost everyone sat in front of their lockers in the morning before class. One morning, a parrot flies down the hallway at 7 a.m. Next, the entire special ed class comes full speed down the hall chasing it, happy as clams. The janitor ended up catching it in a set of double doors. Oh, and some guy into the hand dryers, then duct taped the buttons on. Story 10. We had a pep rally before some big homecoming football game. All seems to be going well, except for the bonfire they promised, then canceled. The crowd of about 200 high schoolers all start to notice that there seems to be commotion over at the football shed. Apparently, some staff and faculty had to detain someone in the shed until the police could arrive. Cops come. Two go in the shed. They come back out looking disheveled and in disbelief. Next time, a larger group of cops goes in. It took 4 officers to get this girl out of there, kicking, screaming, practically foaming at the mouth. And that, kids, was the first time Madison ever did PCP. Story 11. Some people were smoking pots on a balcony. They went inside. It was spring in the southwest. Hot, dry, and windy. And little did they know that an ember caught on the couch. By the time they came back, the couch was blazing. Security had to throw the flaming couch off the balcony to keep the building from burning down. Story 12. The winter of 1973 snowed. A lot. There were drifts up over second-story windows, apparently. This caused a snow day to happen. This being Wisconsin, everyone got hammered drunk. I hear people were jumping out of 4th-floor windows to get out of buildings since the drifts were so high and they were so drunk. All of the alcohol in town was drunk by the students, since the roads were closed and shipments couldn't get in town. We didn't have another snow day until 2010. Wisconsin is awesome. Story 13. 4 kids on my basketball team fried their brains on paint cans and that chemical spray that you use to clean keyboards and electronics. It was weird because it happened before a playoff game. I was team captain, so I had to round up everyone. I found all 4 of them lying on the hotel floor mumbling incoherently. One had his face buried in his vomit, and the other 3 were a blubbering mess. 1 made a full recovery. 2 made slight recoveries. 1 has reverted back to the age of 12 and has been bouncing between group homes and mental hospitals for the last 4 years. Story 14. Home economic room in 10th grade. Some guy was arguing with his ex across the room. All during class we heard them arguing. Teacher was a small elderly lady, so she didn't say anything to them. Girl put on an oven mitt, took the metal grate out of a toaster oven, and went toward the guy like she was gonna burn him with it. Some other guy stepped in front of her to talk her out of it. As soon as he moved out of the way, the guy who was arguing with her threw a microwave across the room at her, hitting her in the face. All hell broke loose in that classroom after that. Story 15. Some kids years ago used to crap in discreet locations and wait until they were found. Like air ducts inside the pipes of the sinks. The dude got creative. Best one I heard was this one. He stole a copy of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, hollowed it out, put crap in it, and returned it. Took the administration like 3 months to realize where the stench was coming from. He was never caught and has gone down in my school's history as the Phantom Pooper. Story 16. University student here. My school's student association ended up headed by some people who were mismanaging pretty much everything, including money. It's also been revealed that some members of the corrupted board have family ties to a previous board member who was found to have mishandled nearly $1 million in association money, and was at the time being sued. So there was a big movement on campus to have them ousted and banned from running for elected offices again. Student council meetings were heavily controlled, and some people were kicked out for questioning these people's actions. A vote was held to try and get them out. Group holding the vote sets it for a day in November, and the student association announces the date for the vote is in December. People trusted the group holding the vote more, so they got ready to vote on the November date. During the vote, someone released pepper spray inside. Fire alarm was pulled, and the whole building evacuated. Eventually, everyone is let back in. Voting is set to continue. Fire alarm is pulled again. When everyone is back inside, about 30 students take up the responsibility to guard the fire alarms. In the end, the voting was a unanimous decision to get rid of the corrupted board. They are escorted out by security when it's time for them to pack up their stuff in the office. Story 17. It happened during middle school. Mind you guys, this was on a military airbase in Germany, so nothing exciting really happened there. At the time, the high schoolers were allowed off campus for lunch. However, the middle schoolers were not. So, being at that rebellious age, many middle schoolers snuck off campus by jumping a fence. Well, during one normal lunch, the intercom goes off asking for some teacher, possibly the principal, to come to the office immediately. They forgot to turn the intercom off after the announcement, and all you heard was screams. What ended up happening is some group of kids decided to jump the fence to go off campus for food. However, one girl was wearing a ring which ended up getting caught on the fence. She ended up de-skinning her finger. Story 18. When I was a sophomore in high school, I had a professor that everyone likes that I'll call Professor X. Anyways, everyone loved Professor X. He was in his early 30s, got along with all the other teachers, and was laid back enough that he would joke around with the students without being awkward about it. About halfway through the first semester, he didn't show up to class. Then the next day, and the next. When we asked our sub about him, her response told us something was wrong. "I'm not allowed to talk about it." Immediately after this, we all started asking around and looking for anyone who knew anything. This is what we found out. Professor X and his wife were going through a rough patch in their marriage, to the point where divorce was discussed. X did not want a divorce and thought up a plan to win her back. With the help of two seniors, he was going to stage a fake robbery and rescue her. On the day it happened, the seniors got in, duct taped her to a chair, and waited for him to come back. X ended up chasing them off, but the wife got out of the chair and called the cops before X could explain what just happened. I don't get his logic at this point. So, now our city has a manhunt for two 18-year-old guys, and they had no idea about the marriage problems and were led to believe that it was just a prank. After a couple of hours, both of the kids' parents were able to talk them down and turn themselves in. Professor X went on to run for a bit, but was caught, and last I heard, works in Dillard's. Moral of the story: be wary of any pranks you're involved in when you start duct taping people. Story 19. Okay, take your pick, ranging from tame to, well, not so tame. Can't verify everything, but these are what I heard. Math teacher had an affair with new female teacher, and she was made to quit, not him. Different math teacher threw a paperclip down my top and asked to retrieve it. French assistant, no older than 21, started screwing the 40-plus-year-old teacher she lived with. He rented a room to her, now in a happy relationship. Fat teacher had her lunch stapled to the staff room ceiling by other staff. The same fat teacher was taken for a spin in someone's new Porsche and then couldn't get out. Had to be cut out of it by firemen. Two girls got stuck in a soundproofed music room for hours after school had finished because the handle had broken off the other side of the door and there was no reception. French teacher got asked to leave after calling a black guy a monkey. Kid brought in a live grenade to school for show and tell. As for rumors versus truth, 1 to 3 I know are true. 4 and 5 were told to me by an ex-member of staff. I was friends with the girls who got stuck in the music room. I spoke to the head teacher about the French teacher leaving, and my boyfriend was in the school at the time the grenade scare happened. As for the chisel incident, I knew the guy who did it. Story 20. Not really at the school, but it's something a student did. We have a rivalry with one of the other schools in town, and years ago it used to be pretty intense. We had people break into our school and vandalize it. Vandalize the big T we have in the front, and brand their mascot into the turf field. It got to the point where a student here with a pilot's license took his dad's plane and TP'd the entire rival school and the neighborhood around it. Last summer, a student climbed on top of the school and kicked an air vent in. He wound up in the auditorium loft where we keep the old sets and props for drama. He signed his name in the dust on a chair and jumped down onto the stage. He left a few flash drives laying around, broke into a, thankfully empty, locked cabinet in the sound booth, and broke into the paint cabinet. Then he tagged the loading dock doors and left the auditorium. He went to the choir room and on the floor, then went into the band hall and broke through the door there. Story 21. I had a teacher a few years ago, let's call him Mr. R, who was quite serious most of the time, but occasionally could be laid back. One day, one of the boys, let's call him Mark, was asking all these unrelated questions to the lesson to try and get Mr. R off topic. I guess he decided that as he wouldn't stop, so he'd answer Mark. Mark asked him what fire looked like, and in response, Mr. R started dancing around and then rolling on the floor, saying, "I'm a fire! Whee!" and other fire-like noises. It got recorded and put on YouTube, and he got fired the next week, so we all thought he was fired for inappropriate behavior or something. Story 22. In my senior year, my entire senior class came in one day, all riding Razor scooters at once. So we had over 500 people riding on scooters in the hallway at once. Some people would scoot by really fast and knock them over. I do remember being in the front of the pack as we entered the school. Some guy in front of me had the worst thing happen to him. A teacher came running out of the door and saw all of us coming in. And on pure instinct, the teacher clotheslines the guy like 5 feet in front of me. Story 23. We had this thing where the entire junior and senior class was brought out to the football field, where some firemen had positioned 2 horribly mangled cars. A bunch of drama students from our school got in the cars and pretended they had just crashed. They landed a helicopter on the field and had fire trucks and ambulances come in and take the kids and stuff. Pretty intense. The best part was that it was televised the next day. They were talking about how the students were so surprised and shocked by everything, and showed a picture of the local dealerinos at our school with his mouth open slightly, honestly looking pretty bored. The situation was pretty fun, and the guy got busted last year, I think. Story 24. When I was in college, some of our dorm supervisors decided to have an Easter egg hunt. My room was right next to a supervisor's office, so I learned that this would be happening. I also learned that some of the prizes would be really nice. So on the day of the Easter egg hunt, instead of going to dinner with everyone else, me and 3 of my friends stayed in our dorm and watched where the eggs would be placed. Then my friend had this great idea to write out little notes to place inside of the eggs once we had removed the contents. Once the supervisors went in to dinner with everyone else, we went around and collected the eggs and replaced them with notes. Then returned to our dorm to watch and go through the prizes. When the first people started finding eggs, the effect was amassing. We could see the people bringing the notes back to the supervisors. They looked more and more confused with each one. The notes said things like, "You snooze, you lose," or "Too late, sucker," or other things like that. Story 25. I went to private school. Had 2 other private schools come to campus for some religious event. Other kids decide to start fights, water bottles flying everywhere. Like 500 to 600 kids just throwing water bottles willy-nilly into the air. Saw a teacher just get clocked in the face with a mostly full bottle. Did not know what was happening. Bunch of AP kids decided to bully 2 other AP kids. One guy's parents' car got covered in cat food, ruined the paint job. The other got a watermelon full of plastic utensils and an M80 blown up on their lawn. This did go to court, and I believe a settlement was reached. Story 26. In German class, in year 7, we had an incredibly irritating and stupid teacher. One day, we had a room change, but the notice fell off the door, so the entire class was sitting in the room with nothing to do. The classroom had 2 doors, one on the outside and one leading to an inside corridor. We got all of the tables and chairs and barricaded the inner door like there was a zombie apocalypse. The teacher took 45 minutes to realize that maybe the students were in the other room. He tried to take down the inner entry but could not get in. He then took another 10 minutes to walk 12 meters to the other door. We all got detention, but it was hilarious. Story 27. It became a fad to carry a screwdriver and unscrew every screw. This was high school. It resulted in an assembly and the principal yelling at us, saying how he tried to open doors but the handle would come off, as well as other things.